Well, hello and welcome to Alamance County Talks Politics. My name is Keith, and in this video, we're going to be talking about an event that took place in Alamance County in 2023 concerning the Sheriff's Department and 10 of its deputies. I'm going to show you the article right now. We're going to look at this, and this article appeared in the Alamance News on January the 9th, 2025, and you can see the heading that says Sheriff and 10 deputies sued over fatal shooting of Burlington man in May of 2023. Now, the reason this is interesting is because we have talked about, I've done several videos on the importance of body cameras, and we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. But let me show you how the Alamance News tells us how these events unfolded, and then I have a guest with me to further teach us or tell us how important body cameras are. Notice here's a lawsuit that has been filed in federal court against Alamance County Sheriff Terry Johnson and 10 unnamed deputies, seeking an unspecified amount of compensation in May of 2023, fatal shooting of a Burlington man, and this is Warren Kent Davis. He was reportedly shot after lunging at deputies with a knife. He says where he lives here, but it says the sheriff's deputies office later reported that deputies had gone to the residence of Carolina Road, receiving a 911 call that Davis was outside the home in violation of a protective order that his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend had taken out against him. Based on a petition filed in Superior Court early in 2024 to obtain copies of the body-worn camera footage captured during the encounter. Now, the interesting thing is Alamance County deputies typically don't have body cameras. In fact, this has been a topic of discussion. Why don't we have body cameras? But apparently there were deputies that did wear body cameras. We'll be talking about that in just a moment. It says, after arriving at the scene, deputies located Davis on the woman's property armed with a knife, according to a brief, and this is so important, according to a brief that Alamance County Attorney Rick Stevens filed in the spring of 2024, which supported the release of the recordings. We'll talk about that too. Now, Davis's mother, she claims in a suit she has filed in the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of North Carolina that deputies initially fired a flashbang round, a non-lethal round that produces a flash of light and loud noise, before opening fire on her son with multiple rounds from an assortment of weapons, including AR-style assault rifles and semi-automatic handguns. In her suit, Fujiwara alleges that Johnson, who was also on the scene as Sheriff Terry Johnson, he knew Davis, calling him by his name Kent, and that he and his deputies knew Davis wasn't armed. She also contends that the body-worn camera footage never showed her son armed with a knife or lunging at the deputies prior to being fatally shot. Now, that's the key. They're saying he had a knife. She's saying he didn't. The body footage said she says the body footage never showed her son armed with a knife. So we'll talk about that. Davis had suffered from substance and mental abuse issues and lived with his girlfriend, Jackie Pleasant. According to the suit, on the day of the shooting, Pleasant had picked Davis up, taken him to her house in Carolina Road, eventually called 911 to have him removed from the property. Johnson had approximately 10 deputies arrive at the scene sometime contemporaneous to his arrival, and later tried to persuade Davis to turn himself in to get arrested, the lawsuit alleges. The complaint notes Johnson never pulled his service weapon while having the conversation with Davis, but alleges that 10 deputies surrounded Davis, who ducked under a truck and laid on his stomach. Several, if not all, of the deputies opened fire on Davis while he was lying prone on his stomach, the suit alleges. And Davis was struck numerous times and killed by a lethal shot to his head while laying prone, or I think that's on his stomach, under the truck. The lawsuit claims that footage captured by several deputies' body-worn cameras contradicted a subsequent account of the shooting outline in the press release issued by the sheriff's office. The sheriff's press release stated that Davis had been given a cigarette by a deputy, and as the deputy turned away, Davis lunged at the officer and was initially hit in the arm by the non-lethal round. So this is something. I mean, they're making this statement. Would body cam footage have shown that? Of course it would have, and we'll talk about that. The press release also stated that as deputies tried to approach a suspect, he again lunged at deputies with a knife and was fatally shot, according to the suit. The victim's mother, Fujiwara, or his mother, further claims that the State Bureau of Investigation didn't conduct an independent investigation as a standard procedure in officer-involved shootings. That's interesting. As the administrator for Davis' estate, she's seeking unspecified compensatory damages. The suit alleges that Johnson, as the sheriff, had the de facto policies, practices, and customs that were a direct and proximate cause of the unconstitutional violations of Davis' rights. And then it goes on to talk about these statutory violations. And it says the response hadn't been filed on behalf of the sheriff or the 10 dependent deputies by press time Wednesday. And then it tells us who she is represented by. So today I have with me an attorney, Chandler Reece, and he's agreed to join me today. So, Chandler, before we begin to talk about this, tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into where you feel like the important part of this case is and the importance of body camera footage.
Yep. Thank you for having me on. My name is Chandler Reece. I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but my whole family's from here. I was raised either in Wilkes or Surrey County, so I'm either from the mountains or the foothills, the edges of those two areas. I went to Western Carolina for my undergrad, and I went to Wake Forest Law School for my law degree. I've been an attorney since October 2023. People might say that because I'm 26, only been a lawyer for under 2 years. What could I know? However, the kind of things we're going to be talking about today are related to Section 1983, which is the civil rights statute, the federal one. And I have been involved in a fairly intense case on that. So I have at least the basic knowledge.
Gotcha. And let me say this: our commissioner, our chair of our commissioners, John Paisley, I believe, also went to Wake Forest Law School. So I think he would be very proud of someone and not lower their understanding based on their experience or age. But so anyway, Chandler, you've looked at this case and you've actually read the file complaint, and you've actually come across a certain portion of this complaint that you would like to focus on. And the reason I'm asking you this is because you're saying that this is in a sense, a contradiction or a problem in these complaints 34 through 41, I believe it is. And we're saying that if all 10 deputies had been wearing a body camera, we would probably more clearly and fully have a better understanding as to what actually happened. So go ahead and explain to us the problem that you have or that you've seen in the complaint that's been filed, especially paragraphs 34 through 41. I'm going to follow along with you, but so tell us a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Yeah, so the reason I focus on paragraphs 34 through 41 is because of one paragraph in there. It's paragraph 38. Paragraph 38 talks about how Warren Kent Davis, who is the decedent, the passed away person in this case, was lying prone when a flashbang went off. And the complaint says several of the 10 deputies on the scene fired shots. The answer says at least one. And they both agree on this key portion, which is you have a man lying prone on his stomach. A flashbang goes off, and then gunshots are fired. And the reason I say there's a contradiction is because if you were to look at the next page in the 40s of the allegations, they refer to the press release that was put out by the sheriff's office, which if you ask the answer says, it speaks for itself. We're not going to answer those distortions. But the press release specifically says that the decedent lunged at the officers with a knife. Both can't be true at once. Now, the answer doesn't admit to him lunging with a knife, but it's going to be a bit of an issue when you have a sheriff's office that in the past, as we've seen from the other media outlets you saw from that article, it claimed that he lunged at him with a knife, and then you have the complaint at least admitting that he was lying prone on his stomach when he was shot. Both can't be true at once. And to get back to the body camera's concern, none of us were there. We don't know. We don't know who anyone else at the scene would have witnessed that is not a defendant, that's not a law enforcement defendant. And we can't ask Mr. Kent Davis because he's no longer with us. So what would be helpful with the body cameras, what you would hope could be done, we have at least two, is that you could take their video, sync them to when the bang goes off, and try to see, was there any kind of movement? Anything that would suggest firing a flashbang? Or was this more of a situation where a flashbang goes off and then the officers think it's shots fired and they fire? Because we don't know the line of sight the 10 deputies had as opposed to Mr. Terry Johnson, the sheriff himself, or I guess Officer Johnson. Sorry, not Officer, Sheriff Johnson would have had. And the reason, I guess, to skip to one question viewers will have is there's a debate going on about body cameras. Why would they have been helpful? Well, if there's Sheriff Johnson, 10 deputies, that could be 10 or 11 body cameras. whose video you could sync up to the bang to get even better sense based on viewpoints. Was there any kind of movement that justified this shooting? Get to the
Yeah.
truth of the matter.
Yeah, and that's a good point because we're talking about the importance of body cameras. And like we're saying, you without the body cameras, you're basically left up to testimony of the individuals that are involved. And typically, and listen, I hope nobody even lunges this or throws this at me. I voted for Sheriff Johnson every time he's ran. I am a supporter of law enforcement, but I'm a supporter of law enforcement for everybody. Everybody. They've got to follow the law. We've got to follow the law. When they don't follow the law, they violate it. Whether you're an officer, whether you're not, you need to be held accountable. So listen, I've lived in Alamance County all my life, and I have seen numerous videos of officers saying one thing in the complaint form, and then it comes out that the video camera shows something quite differently. And so the reality is officers do sometimes lie in their complaint forms. And I'm not saying it's that way in this case, but I'm saying let's just remove all doubt by making sure that all officers involved have body cameras that will show what happened. It will detail the events for us. And like you said, we can put it together from different angles, from different perspectives to see exactly what unfolded. Did he lunge? The body cameras are it's a no-brainer. It really is. I mean, it is interesting. And I'm interested to see what these other two body cameras reveal. But this is something, I guess I'm thinking, why were they wearing body cameras and the other deputies aren't? I mean, from what I've understood, and I don't know if this is true, and I probably shouldn't even say it, they were wearing them. We know they were wearing them. So don't know how they got by with wearing them, or whether Johnson wanted them to wear them. I have no idea. But the reality is without that body cam footage, just those two cameras, it would be the officer's word against the others. And I mean, in typically those cases, they follow the officer's complaint form until you can prove something differently. Am I right about that?
Yeah, in a good sense you are, because very often an attorney's advice, if this were a criminal case, very often an attorney's advice is, look, there's no body camera, nobody else was there. It's going to be the officer's word versus yours. The judge sees the officer all the time, and if it's a bad cop, the judge would know that. But unless the judge has seen any kind of indication of that, they're going to think this is a regular officer just doing his job. He's not going to go out of his way to make up something on you. But talking about a civil case, maybe more 50-50, because it's not a criminal case where the government is coming against you for a crime that they witnessed. It's you saying the officer did something wrong to me.
I got you. That's a good point. Good point. Yeah.
But there's still a little bit of a preference, though, because, of course, if you're a plaintiff's lawyer, what you'd love to do is try to look in an officer's history, try to find any bad things, any prior complaints, because there's some rules of evidence that could help you that even if prior people weren't successful, you might be able to bring it up to the jury that, if you say I had 5 people and those lawsuits didn't succeed, but weren't they alleging about the same thing? Mm. Why is it, officer, that this is your 6th time being accused of this? But if you don't come up with that, then it's a blank slate.
And in this case, you have 10 officers. I mean, and so I guess I'm saying you.
And to clarify, the 10 officers aren't named. Officer Johnson isn't named. I've not done any research to say that's true of them. I'm just talking about general cases.
No, and I agree. And it does say the 10. It just says Johnson had approximately 10 deputies. This is reported arrive at the scene sometime. What I guess I'm saying is, typically without body cam footage, you're going to you could potentially have a contradiction of evidence, I guess, or eyewitness testimony. You understand what I'm saying? The deputies may say one thing, the other lady may say one other thing because she was there and witnessed it. And so the body cam footage actually just does away with all of the, some of what me and you were doing. I mean, from what I'm doing anyway, speculating at certain situations, because I don't know, but the body cams would really go a great deal to helping us to understand at a deeper level as to what happened.